And so, yes, as I said, we are continuing our Adventure in Prosperity 2016, and our theme is Spirit, Money, and You. Now, we are courageously focusing on money and discovering that it is a profoundly spiritual journey. Profoundly spiritual. Because we're coming to understand in this series that money is an instrument of the energy and the love of God, of the one life, of the infinite source, whatever you want to call it. And that money serves the intention of this divine force and source to uplift and to advance life through all of us as we use it. And so that is why we are so delighted to declare that money is God in action. Let's declare that. Money is God in action, and money is love in action. Money is love in action. Now, when we can really see through the fog and see this clearly, I believe that's the beginning of a healthy personal economy. When we really get that message, when we align ourselves with and we bless the spiritual essence of money, then what it does is it relieves all of the stuff around it, and we find that we begin to attract more of the actual form of money in our lives with less of the struggle and the angst that we may have experienced before. And then by remembering that we are all points of distribution for the circulating and the activity of money, then as we go forth in that, we become dynamic and natural magnets for more. Now, these are the foundational ideas of this series, and I just invite us to keep affirming them and reinforcing them in our lives. So important. That brings us then to our second topic, today's topic, and that is resolving and dissolving old hang-ups. And isn't it true that there are so many hang-ups abounding about abundance, about the support that we might have in this life? So many hang-ups. And you can see them broadcast in so many different ways. I've been keeping a collection of bumper stickers that I have been seeing over the years. And here are some of those. One of them that I wrote down said, "Lead me not into temptation, I can find the way myself." So true. So true. I love this. When you're finally holding all the cards, why does everyone else play chess? That victim-y thing there, right? Oh, somebody had it right here. The only difference between a rut and a grave is the depth. And that's true. How is that for you? Oh, I love this one. "I'm just working here until a good fast food job opens up." Now, there's a great sense of vision in that. Can't you feel the dream that's alive in that? And finally, one other, and this is so typical. "I thought I wanted a career. Turns out I just wanted paychecks." So much stuff and hang-ups around abundance and money. And I tell you what, those can become deeply embedded in us. And since life flows from within out, these hang-ups can become log jams in the flow of your life and mine. And so it benefits us, it behooves us to be willing to be honest with ourselves about the stuff we carry, the hang-ups that we carry about money and about abundance in general, so that we can work with that and get that out of the way. As Emerson said, so we can get our bloated nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits. The nothingness of all those old ideas. All right, unless that's what we're about today. And I want to start with a survey of some of the most common misconceptions about money, so that we can be clear about which of them are working in our own lives. Now, one of the misconceptions is that money is hard to get and even harder to hold on to. Have you invested in that idea? Do you feel that idea? Do you just instinctively gravitate to that idea? Money is difficult to get and even harder to hold on to. Now, if an individual has that, they're usually be found to be saying, "I can't have it, I can't have it. Money doesn't flow to me." Despite the fact that in the Bible it says, "Whatever you desire when you pray, believe that you shall receive it, and you shall have it. You shall receive it." It's not like the universe is withholding, but we believe we can't. We believe it has to be a difficulty in our lives. Sometimes individuals believe and would declare, I don't deserve money. An old sense of undeservability in their life. And yet in the Bible it says, ask and you shall receive, that your joy might be full. And so the universe is intending for your joy, intending for the glory of your expression. Oh, and then there are others who would say, well, maybe it's not right for me to have abundance, to have money, work and flow in my life. Maybe it's just not right. And yet in the Bible it said it is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And part of that is money. Have you invested in that idea? Are you clinging to that money's difficult? This would be a wonderful day to begin to dissolve that notion in your life. We'll talk about how later on. Now, many have bought into the idea that money is basically bad. Or you've heard the term filthy lucre. I don't know who came up with that. But that it's ugly, that it's not good. If that's true, how is it then that almost all of the great and beautiful achievements humankind have come up with have been fueled by money? You see, money is just an energy, and you can use any energy creatively or destructively. But basically, money is innocent. It's innocent. You know, in the Bible, most of the leaders in the Bible were either born rich or they developed great riches, or whenever they needed any money, they had it. When they needed resources, they had it. It was a natural flow, and we could make it that way. And I was interested to realize that of the 38 parables of Jesus, 18 of them dealt with money. Again, embracing this in the spirituality of life, not holding it as this foreign, awful thing in life. But then you hear people spout off things like money is the root of all evil. Have you heard that? And you know, that's a total mistranslation. If you go into the metaphysical or the Aramaic translation, it's greed or lust of money is the root of all evil. It's making money that source. You see, that's the root of it, not money itself. No, not at all. And then there are those who talk about a fool and his money. And isn't that derogatory? I've always wondered, though, how does a fool and money come together in the first place, if that were absolutely true? A fool and, and then there are those who spout off terms like cold, hard cash. Now, that to me seems a little harsh. How about warm, fuzzy cash? You know, a different sort of a different feel tone there to this. Do you hang out in that whole idea that it's bad somehow? Then there's the misconception that money is key to success, to happiness, and to self-worth. And it's either a needed key or it's a negative key for some. For some, it's essential. You're not a success. You're not worthy. You can't be happy unless you have that. I mean, think of the times, though, you've read stories about individuals who've experienced a windfall. You know, maybe they got an inheritance or a lottery or great investment came through or something, and they didn't have the consciousness to deal with that, and eventually their lives became ill with it, and it all fell away. We've seen too many examples of that. It's really not the key to success. It's not the key to self-worth. And then some people blame the presence of it for the destruction of those things, when money doesn't have that power unless we give it to it. Remember the most recent story of the affluenza boy, you know, Ethan Couch, who killed some people drinking and driving. And the defense was that he had too much stuff and too much money. And again, thinking that has that power that it doesn't have. What are the misconceptions that, though you think they're innocent and they're just in the background, really have a kind of power in you and a power in your life? If we want to move beyond the struggle with money, we got to be willing to work on that. Have to be willing to know what those are and dissolve them. Disempower them in our experience. Now, if it's not misconceptions, I know that some of our hang-ups have to do with memories. Memories usually from our childhood, where we were little sponges, soaking up all this stuff. And those memories are deeply embedded and powerfully active in our subconscious, more powerful than we may realize. For instance, if a child experienced excessive scarcity and scrimping in their growing up, then they're liable to, in their adulthood, really be very clear that money isn't available and it's a struggle because of that experience. If a child experienced a whole lot of broken promises, being told this is going to happen and I'll get you this or I'll provide this, and then it never happened, then more than likely that child will have a suspicion on life itself, in the sense that it can't be there for them. Good just can't flow to them. Maybe as a child you saw families ripped up and destroyed over money, such that seeded in you, and you carry to this day a distrust of it. And a part of you says, come here, money, but a part of you says, no, stay away. I don't want it to rip up my life like it did those folks. And then there's all the shaming and guilt around money that we may have experienced when we were kids. How many of you heard the phrase, money doesn't grow on trees? And it was meant to be this message of, how dare you ask? Or we might have heard, what do you think I'm made of? Money? Or then we heard, how many of you heard, when I was your age, and then we listened to this saga and felt guilty for even asking. And that shame and that guilt survives to this day in our life. Oh, you see, what we got to do is be willing to be aware of these hang-ups that come into our lives. At some point, the misconceptions, the old memories. It could also be adult mishaps with money. Maybe it was that risky choice you made, that risky investment, or that unwise loan or purchase. Maybe it was gambling on the economy. I love what somebody said, that economists are people that God put on the earth to make meteorologists and astrologers look good. And so maybe you followed the advice of some economists and it didn't work out. Or maybe you experienced a bankruptcy and you still feel the sting and the pain of that. This week I was reflecting on some of the wealthy people I know, and I know a good number of wealthy people. And you know what? Here's the deal. 90% of them either experienced bankruptcy or came within a hair's breadth of it. And yet they didn't let it stigmatize them and pull them down. What are the misconceptions, the old memories, or the painful experiences that might be hang-ups in your life? It's important to deal with them if we're really going to move forward in this and become masters of money so that our lives can become the powerful gifts to life they're designed to be. Now remember this, nothing pushed down stays down. Nothing that we push down in us stays down. I mean, if you're pushing away this stuff, it's going to come up. It's either going to come up in you emotionally at critical times, or it's going to come up in your experience. Nothing pushed down stays down. So we might as well let it be there and work with it. Because if we don't deal with the old baggage and the old hang-ups, what happens is we close our hearts to some degree of life and of abundance. And that's tragic because, the heart is where faith lives. The heart is where a vision can be recreated. The heart is where new life unfolds. The heart. We can do this. At this point, I want to share with you a story from the Bible, the story of Solomon. Maybe you remember Solomon. He was the son of David. And early on in his life, he had cultivated a high degree of consciousness, a pretty good awareness and wisdom. And in fact, this story about him says that at one point, God says to Solomon, you can have anything you want, anything at all. What do you want? Which, by the way, is the question life is asking of every one of us all the time. You can have anything. What do you want? Now, Solomon, again, given this leading edge of his growth, he replied, Lord, I want wisdom. I want a wise and understanding heart. I want to know right from wrong, to know what's counterfeit and what's real. And then the Bible says, God replied, yes, you can have that and so much more. And the result of it was that Solomon became one of the richest kings ever. This combination of acceptance and wisdom. And everything was going along fine. And what we all have to understand is no matter where we are in our life, usually there is new growth tapping us on the shoulder. Have you noticed that? There's always new growth tapping on the shoulder of every one of us. And in a way, it calls in the needed experiences that can catalyze that growth so we don't get too stuck in this life. Same thing for Solomon, because it says that later on in his life, King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, "You must never intermarry with them because they will turn your hearts to their gods." But nevertheless, it says, Solomon held fast to these women in love. And in fact, it says that he married 700 women from foreign countries and had 300 concubines. Now that's abundance, at least in some form of it. But I love the next line. This is a classic line. And it says, "And his wives led him astray." Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah, sure they did. He had nothing to do with it. And then it concludes, "And as Solomon grew older, his heart was no longer fully devoted." Now that's an important phrase. His heart was no longer fully devoted. Now these Bible stories, if you just deal with them at the surface level, you don't really get their real meaning. You got to dive deeper into this. Now, I highly doubt that he had 700 wives. Good Lord, how would he remember all those birthdays anyway? I mean, no way in the world. But you see, it speaks instead, it calls us to look at what are you married to? What in your consciousness are you married to, linked to? Where has your heart gone in your consciousness? All right? I mean, how many times do we honestly realize that we've been worshiping at the altar of substance and of form? Where's the spiritual marriage in our hearts? Where are we knowing that greater truth about ourselves? You see, we confuse our abundance with things so often. And when we do that, we're in a foreign land. And our heart is not truly devoted. Sometimes we relate to money at its surface form. And again, we're in a foreign country with that. And our hearts are no longer fully devoted. And the only way our life is going to begin to grow is when we are devoted to the core truth that God is all there is, and that God is total abundance, and that can flow. And it's the fullness of our being to which nothing else can really be added, and we can be married to that and seek nothing else beyond that. And I want to put something in for the feminine principle here, because lest you think that this was somehow against feminism. Actually, what we need to understand is that the feminine symbolizes the receptive and the great leadership of our lives. For instance, Eve sometimes gets a bad rap in the Bible because, you know, the whole thing about she ate the apple and that messed everything up. And, you know, the truth of the matter is, if you want to go beyond that misogynistic interpretation, the truth of the matter is that she was receptive enough to realize and to assert her leadership to eat of that apple, eat of the fruit of the tree of good and evil, because it's exactly what God intended. I mean, you don't put a tree there and say, don't eat it, and expect that it's not going to happen. Of course God knew that Eve would eat that apple. And, you know, Adam's just walking around, I don't know what's going on. And Eve says, I'm going to eat the apple, and I'm going to serve humankind. We're going to be ushered out of the garden of naivety, of unactivated consciousness, and we're going to get busy discovering who we are and what life is all about. Let's give Eve a hand. Now, it's the same thing in this story. It's the receptive leading edge in Solomon that says, you're not entirely fully clear. You started out that way, but there's another level for you to go to. And you've drifted. You're not fully devoted. How many of us are not fully devoted? We think these things, but then we get afraid and we hold back. And we step outside of the principles, aren't living them. And so it's all about the heart. And coming back to a heartfelt realization of money being actually the Spirit in action, a form we've created to be creative and to unfold life. And we're a part of that. And we can use it wisely, openly. And we can get over the hang-ups about it. And I tell you what, if you're ever going to get over any hang-up, it will always be that you discovered how to use your heart to do that. The great healing center in every one of us is the heart. The heart. Today I want to send us on our way with 3 activities of heart that we can use. Higher heart, healing heart, and honoring heart. First of all, higher heart. Higher heart is when we go to the heart of the matter regarding all of our good, money flowing in our life, and we get over our hang-ups and we realize money is good. It is God in action. And we get over the idea that God gives. Let's get over that idea because God doesn't give. How can God give what God infinitely is? God doesn't give, God is. And that is the fullness of all creation, of all possibility. We are in the midst, every one of us, of the total expression of the divine. And it's automatically our divine birthright and inheritance. So it's not about that old idea of, I wonder if I can convince God in my prayers to give me something good. It's the waking up to the fact that we live, move, and have our being in the very abundance and life of the divine. It has already bestowed upon us all we can accept, but our responsibility in our heart of hearts is to become a good receiver and to accept our good and not drive it away because of our old hang-ups about that stuff. To accept our good. Jesus said, to him who has, more is given, and to him who has not, even what he has falls away. What he's saying is if you have a have consciousness, then you attract more. If you have a have-not consciousness, and because of any of the hang-ups, then you're driving your good away. You don't even have to try. I mean, that conclusion that I'm a have-not will effectively repel any and every bit of good that we would bring into our lives. So higher heart is cultivating this have consciousness. And we do this by stopping the judgments. We cease judging our abundance by the state of our checkbook, by the state of our possessions in one way or another, by the quality of our job and all the judgments. And we start centering ourselves right now in abundance. And we decide that because of who I am and the life that I am a part of, I am abundance. It's all given. I couldn't ask for more, but I can open to more. And I can start practicing a have consciousness. I have money. I have blessings. I have creativity. I have love. I have everything I'm willing to open my heart to and express. This is higher heart. Much like when the children of Israel were wandering around and the kings of Israel, Edom and Judah, had gotten them out there without enough water, so they went to the great prophet Elisha and bemoaned that and said, we don't have water, what do you do? And so he brought forth the wisdom of God, Elisha did, that great prophet, and he said, go out and dig ditches. God says, go dig ditches, and you're not going to see rain and you're not going to see wind, but they will be filled to overflowing. So they did. They dug a bunch of ditches, and the next day they got up in the morning, and it was filled to overflowing. Water was everywhere, which is really, again, symbolic of carve out that expectancy within. Readiness to receive from the bounty that is already ours. That's at the higher heart of the matter. And then we can move into the healing heart. The healing heart that ceases to judge ourselves because of our hang-ups, but applies the tremendous elixir of love. The truth is, all of our hang-ups are based in fear. You drill down into that and winnow it down, every single hang-up, whether it's the misconceptions or the memories from the past or painful stuff that happened with money, all of the hang-ups about it are because we're afraid. And perfect love casts out fear. So we open our hearts to ourselves once again. And we let the healing begin. Arnold Patent wrote a great book called Money and Beyond, and he has a healing exercise in it that I really think a lot of. And he says whenever you have the feelings that go along with any of these misconceptions or memories in your life, he says, first of all, don't push it down. Remember, nothing pushed down stays down. So let it be there. He said, so feel it. Feel the feeling. And then he says part 2 is feel love for the feeling. Rather than feeling guilt for it or antagonism with it, feel love for that feeling, whatever it is. And then his third step is feel love for yourself, feeling the feeling. You see how powerful that is? Let that energy be there. Love it, because then you're standing back and you're the one loving, and then love yourself for feeling it. And then all of a sudden, you're bigger than that. And you're in a field of love that heals all things. And pretty soon, you'll find those old hang-ups, they don't have the energy they have because you're a part of a bigger energy. Then you can practice the peace declaration that I love, because really what's a part of peace, if you use all those letters, and you know I'm apt to do that, I am positive, expansive, not limited, abundant, confident, and enthusiastic. Let's declare that together. I am positive, expansive, abundant, confident, and enthusiastic. Now we're going to say it one more time, but we're going to say it slower. And I want to invite you to, in this field of love, actually feel those qualities in you, alive in you. Let's say it together again. I am positive. Feel that light of positivity. I am expansive, opening up to life. I am abundant. Feel that sense that you're part of something greater than you know. I am confident, ready to go. And I am enthusiastic. Healing heart. Arnold Patton writes in that book, in terms of money and the principle of abundance, when we open our hearts to the core issues in our lives, we begin to move from a state of resistance into a state of openness. Healing heart. Healing heart. And then that brings us to the honoring heart. And that is quite simply trusting again. Through your heart, the higher heart and the healing heart, you're willing to trust your vision. You're willing to trust that as you go forward on whatever you're called to be or do or express, that everything you need, all the resources are provided for you right now. And that sense of acceptance and readiness as you're stepping forward and going forward in your life. Honoring heart. That because you're a blessed, prospered child of the divine, you can go forward and do what you are here to do and be what you are here to be. Heart. That's what today's all about. Healing all the hang-ups, whatever they might be, from that space of higher heart, healing heart, and honoring heart. Your heart is profoundly, profoundly powerful. And may you let it be the boon and the healing elixir that you need. I want to close with this beautiful testament to the power of heart. This is written by Jason Longhurst. A little something he wrote called To the Child Who Gets My Little Brother's Heart. On March 2nd, 2016, my 11-year-old brother, Eric Longhurst, was hit by a truck while crossing the street. The trauma knocked him unconscious, and the damage to his brain quickly stopped his breathing. Paramedics gave him CPR, and the doctors helped him breathe, but it was clear that he wasn't coming back. Because of his condition, we asked about the possibility of donating a part of him to help others. It's what he would have wanted. And if you're the lucky child who gets his heart, you should know what you can expect. Eric's heart was the biggest part of him. He loved more than normal people. He seemed to have an extra portion of vitality. Maybe he knew somehow that he wouldn't have as much time as the rest of us, and he was determined to get as much living done as he could. First, Eric loved life. In the summer, he begged to go swimming. In the winter, he wanted to go sledding. When I went to adopt my dog, he came with me, and he rode all the way home with her. He had a childlike optimism and tenaciousness. Now, maybe your life has been difficult. Sometimes you might wonder if it's worth carrying on, that the pain is too much or the effort too great. Remember that now you have his heart. Be optimistic and tenacious. Life is great for those who choose to live it. Secondly, Eric loved people. His teachers adored him. His friends worshiped him. And he knew how to push people to be their best. He was a light to everyone who knew him because they knew how much he cared. Sometimes it's hard for you to love. People do stupid things. Sometimes you feel alone and without a friend to lean on. Remember that your heart is his heart, and you can love everyone. Teach them to reach above the clouds by believing in them, and they will love you too. And finally, Eric loved to win. Many family gatherings were spent playing games around the table. He always wanted to be a part of the game, even if he'd never played it before. And he wasn't afraid to lose. He just loved playing the game. If you're lucky enough to have his heart, remember what a privilege and responsibility you carry. Because of you, a piece of him keeps on living. The rest of us are lucky too. He gave us something special. Everyone who met him or hears his story will carry that for life. He taught us that we can all love life, love people, and love winning a little more. Inside each of us, Eric's heart beats on. May your heart be that open and that fully devoted to the truth of the divine in you. And may your life be the glory it's intended to be.